trying to learn from people who lived it, wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from people who lived it.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Rick, and my age is 58.
Rick, what story are you here to share today?
Story of you're never too old to do something bold.
Who do you hope hears this?
Anybody who's like, oh, I don't think I can, because I'm here to tell you can. You can do whatever this thing is. And we're going to get there, but you can do whatever it is that you think you can't do.
When I met Rick for the first time, it was via the Speaker Lab, which is a school that I enrolled in to try to get some framework around this motivational speaking business that I'm trying to blow up right now. Dr. Frank Vivacqua, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Yes. And as I was just saying, I met Rick in one of those first one-on-one meetings, and he's really in the space of helping gay men live unapologetic lives. And I know that you do a lot more than that, but you would agree, right? That's the lane you drive down the fiercest.
That's the lane I drive down the fiercest, and it's a lot of work. So I'm just putting it out there. Let's just get real. I love my gay brothers, but come on, boys. You are a rodeo in and of itself.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we're here to talk about so many things today. But, when I think about you, Rick, and I don't know you, incredibly well. We don't have a huge tenure together. But, right. I was saying to Frank earlier, I think what you represent, Rick, is you represent that age of men who really had to keep their sexuality a secret. You really did grow up in a time where it wasn't as acceptable as it is now. And so we're going to talk about a lot of things here. And as I always prep people and learn from people who lived it, this is a place to get a little messy and in the spirit of figuring it out. So if we get messy, just help us clean up the mess, because we're here to understand. We're here to learn more. So we will get to 0 to 10 in a second. I want to know, how are things now? How are things for 58-year-old Rick?
Well, they're good till I met you, and then I'm like, this is work too. So I'm just saying, teaching speakers how to build a business.
I felt the same way.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
These guys.
It's good, and what's so interesting is, if somebody had told me 1999 is when my world exploded, and it's continued to explode in different ways. But if somebody had told me then that you're going to use this, you're going to, if God reached down and said, listen to me, really listen to me, man. Yeah. You're going to use this to make impact in the world. I've been like, I can't even figure out how I'm going to have 2 houses right now. I think I'm going to end up living in a car and everybody's going to hate me. And then to know that I get to speak on amazing stages all across the world, and I have 2 successful podcasts, and I've been in an amazing relationship with a guy that I don't know why he still puts up with me after 21 years, but hey, there we are, Right. Raised 2 beautiful girls, and I'm still kicking. I would have said, you're freaking crazy. This is not going to be it. I mean, I was a high-flying exec, and I'm losing everything. Boy, was I wrong. So that's where divine intervention and having faith and trust in what's happening for you is happening for you, not to you.
That's such a great thing to say.
I'm real intrigued already, so I need to hear how this started.
We keep you in the dark, Frank, until we get live. It's okay. Here we go.
We'll bring you in when we think you're ready. We think you're ready. That's how things are now. Things are good. You're in a positive headspace. You would declare yourself in a good space, and it's safe to say then that it always wasn't like that. There was a period of time where it was pretty tough.
Very tough. I mean, let's kind of start even pre the whole coming out, being married for 13 years to a loving woman and 2 kids. I mean, prior to that, it was even tougher, because I'm like, there's some stuff I'm feeling and doing and knowing and looking at guys and but I can't do that because I'm in a very religious, home, so to speak, and going to religious schools and everything. And but why is this what's happening for me? And then seeing outside the world going, well, you can be that, but guess where you're going if that's what you do. And it was very confusing. Yeah.
How old were you, do you think, when you made that announcement to the world?
19. Mm-hmm. 19 to be exact. We're going to college in Tennessee, and called home to parents in Arkansas and said, so here's the thing. No, it's not. Okay. Yeah,
I want to talk about that. I really do want to talk about that. But before we get to that moment, will you give me a little bit of a lens into your life, 0 to 10? I mean, you mentioned that you grow up in a religious house, but what is life like for you, 0 to 10?
So semi-religious house. So let me reframe that. My mom and dad were, well, let's just put it this way. Mom won a hot pants contest in San Francisco. So not super religious. Let's just go there, right? They were their interesting own little version of hippies, and we lived in Northern California, and it was life was good. I mean, I got to play in the vineyards, so who doesn't love getting to play in the vineyards as a kid, right? But raised Seventh-day Adventist, so a lot of interesting different restrictions there, and was religious. You know, hey, I love going to church and camp and all that sort of stuff, but there was a fear. There was just a fear-based mentality that like surrounded and just really enveloped me in so many ways. But ironically, I had a role model who was gay, my dad's oldest brother, amazing guy. And I saw him and his partner at all the family events. And I'm like, well, okay, but wow. And then I started realizing, oh, I kind of get this, but don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Don't. And even what got mimicked in the family was like, we love him. We love him. And then the minute they were out of the purview of the family. Oh, but there's such light in the pants and, blah, blah, blah. But boy, everybody sure loved going to their fabulous home in San Francisco and overlooking the entire San Francisco area and going to their great restaurants. I mean, they would be kind of what I would consider A-list gays today. I mean, because, hello, Harvey Milk was one of their friends. So let's just go there. So
yeah, right.
It was a different era, but let's not talk about this because guess what? There's this lovely thing called the rug that we grab the broom and we sweep all that stuff under and just hide it. And so for many years, that's what I did. I never really talked about it. I had feelings. I could, you said I could push the envelope. So it wasn't until I realized because of another person in my world who sexually awakened me at a very young age, 7, 8 years old, that suddenly there was a light bulb that went ding. Not because, oh, this is fun, which it was, but ding, oh, now I kind of understand why I look at men in a different way than I do women. And that person didn't have the right to do. I will never advocate any of that. No, we're not all pedophiles. So if that's how you feel, you might want to tune out right now. But it was a thing where I'm like, I get this. I didn't know what to do with it, but I kind of got it. I mean, it got talked about very quickly because that got brought to my parents' attention and other people, but then, okay, that's not going to happen again. And then it did happen again. And no, it's not going to happen again. And finally it did quit happening. But I'm like, but hello, this is what I am. This is what I understand. And then 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere in that range. And then catapult to 19 when I finally get to college. I'm like, I can breathe. I can have a few breaths. But then it was ironic because I had kind of fallen in love with my best friend in high school. And then suddenly I show up to college and I was heartbroken because he's going to one college, I'm going to a separate college, and all this weird stuff I was feeling was like, guess what? You were in love. You were in love with a guy. But then suddenly we go 2 different paths and then I end up at college and the first person I run into was like the spitting image of my best friend. And suddenly the heart flutters and everything started happening again. I found my way to weasel my way into being friends with him, unconsciously, consciously knowing I just want to be around this guy because I found him very attractive and everything. And finally, that's when I'm like, I can't hold this any longer because now there's other people. It was so interesting. The secrets that happen because so many guys that I hung out with in high school and then in college. And now I'll go somewhere and I'm like, what are you doing here? You were gay too? Well, hell yeah, we were gay. We were all hiding this stuff. Kind of. I
want to bring Frank in really quick to the conversation, if you don't mind, Dr. Frank, because, we say this all the time on our podcast, right? Like Rick's story is his story. And, but there's a lot of other kids that experience that exact same thing. They have a feeling, mom and dad don't recognize it as a truth. And so they try to do something different. On what level can your training help out in this space?
I think one of the common themes across everybody that we've talked to is like authenticity, right? Like when people are trying to live in a way that is not like who they really are, like it results in stress and all the other things beyond that, right? When you're trying to be someone that you think everybody else wants you to be, or pursue the occupation that you're supposed to pursue, or love who you're supposed to love, or do like all of that stuff is stressful when you're living for someone else and not yourself.
It's a good way to put that. Did you feel that way a lot, Rick? Like you were living for other people until you were able to come out with it?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day in every way. But even when I did come out with it, when mom and dad said, no, you can't be that. I'm like, well, okay, that's your perspective. But I was afraid. Okay. My dad was a narcissist, very domineering sort. So I was afraid dad was going to beat the crap out of me. But hey, he can't beat the crap out of me because I'm 800 miles away from home. So that's not going to happen. But in a way they did, like, okay, well, we're going to set up an appointment for you to talk to the church pastor. okay.
So that's how they reacted.
Yep. Now, I did not go through conversion therapy by any stretch of the imagination, but, I had a few appointments, but right after the first one happened, I showed up and he was the youth pastor. I really admired this guy. I enjoyed being in church when he spoke, but then I showed up for this meeting and I sat down and I'm like, sorry, Mom and Dad, this isn't working because he's really, really hot. So I'm not concentrating on anything else. So I'm being honest. I mean, that's what I'm like, great. I get to come visit the hot pastor for the next 6 weeks. Cool.
Yeah. You're like, score, Mom. Thank you, Dad.
I also was like, this is like really blasphemous. So God, can we do this somewhere else? Not inside the church.
Wow.
Crying out loud. But it was not fun because again, even in that moment, I'm like, okay, I guess I'll be what everybody else wants. And that started becoming the repeating pattern, literally.
So I gotta ask a question because I feel like there are some people, and maybe we've all known somebody like this, like they come out as gay at some point, and the collective reaction is like, yeah, duh, like we knew that. Like we knew that years ago, like we were just waiting for you to figure it out kind of a thing. Did you get any kind of that react? Like, did people ever say like, yeah, like we knew, or did you, did you hide it well?
I would say I hid it really well. Now, here's what's interesting. When I did come out finally at 36, and then as I started to, in weird ways, reconnect with like high school, college people, they're like, well, yeah, we knew. I'm like, well,
tell me.
But let's put it in the container of high school. That was it was a Seventh-day Adventist boarding school. I wasn't in the dorms, but I lived in that immediate vicinity. And so it was like, no, we don't talk about this stuff. And then, like I said, it's so interesting. Like, okay, well, I hung out with him. Oh, he's gay. I hung out with him. Oh, he's gay. And then her, and it's like, suddenly there's like this whole network of people. I'm like, well, so all of us were like taking breaths and holding it in and, so it's not surprising, but then there's other people like after, like even close friends of ours that my wife and ex-wife and I had. I've ran into a few of them along the way. And of course, it was always the hunky husbands. I was like, oh, let's be friends. He's hot, right? And they're like, yeah, we knew. We just were like, okay, I guess Sherry kind of knows. And I'm like, I don't think I was acting that gay. I don't act that gay in general. I mean, right. I just spent a whole week in Costa Rica with 200 gay men. They're like, you're gay? I'm like, hello, I'm looking at you. Hello. But it is that thing. I think there's that layering, Frank, that it's like you layer and you learn to layer and layer and layer. And then suddenly this is your reality. You cover up.
I want to know how did you react in situations, Rick, when people would make gay jokes or when people would make derogatory comments around the people of that, that have that identifies gay and lesbian and all. How did you act in those moments?
Did you say something? I'm kidding. But that's kind of what I do. It's like, I'd act like I didn't hear what they said, Now, when it got derogatory, I'm like, but wait, people are people. And then I'd usually throw my uncle was gay, so this isn't cool. Because that was an easy way to like, hey, my uncle was gay and I really loved him. He was a great guy. And then I throw the sympathy card, and he was one of the first ones to pass away from AIDS. So chill out, people. But,
there is so much. There's so much bad information for so long surrounding it. And I mean, as far as you can tell, because listen, this is why we have this podcast, Rick, is to help people feel less alone, encourage them to talk about it. And so I wonder, what are some of those things that people get so wrong about gay people?
Well, I've already brought up a couple of them. A, we're not all pedophiles. Secondly, we're not all just like, let's go have sex and have sex and have sex and have sex. That is not what every gay man or lesbian is about. And this isn't a choice. This is the thing that bothers me the most. This isn't a choice. I spent years with people like Frank, and if Frank had been my therapist, I would have been like, I wouldn't have paid attention either because he's really good looking too. But anyway,
he gets it all the time.
Mathew doesn't get that, although
ever.
I think I told Mathew he was handsome one day too, just to try to get him to get his homework done in the other course. But what's so interesting about this is when it comes to that choice thing, I'm like, you don't get to pull that card, because now that I literally like really work to like unravel and unpack things, I can kind of roll back to when I was like around 4 years old and thinking and standing in certain situations going, that's really attractive. that's something I really, look at him. He's really, and it wasn't because, my little boy penis, the size of my pinky, was all hard. It's like, there's something attractive about looking at that. Not that I didn't, I never had problem with women. I mean, heck, I was married for 13 years. And if I was put in the right situation, I could probably have sex with a woman again. It's just what I find myself more comfortable and attracted to. But it took a lot of years of like, let's unpack, let's figure this out. And I hate using that term unpack, but that's what it is. You got to keep pulling back the layers and go, okay, where did this start? And for so many things that get wrong, it's, you can't be this. This is not who you're supposed to be. To me, that's where so many people in our LGBTQ space, they hear that message from wee little kids. And when that gets over the years, suddenly here you are in high school or college, and no, I can't be that. I just can't be that.
How much of that message is generational? And like, when was the last time you heard somebody under the age of 30 make a comment like, implying that it's a choice? Like, are all of the people that you're thinking about currently now 40, 50, 60 years old? Like, when was the last time you heard a young person have that idea?
Probably in the last couple of weeks.
Really?
Because it's still out there.
Mm.
We don't think it is, but if you tune in to any time, okay, so it's Pride Month. I mean, yeah, let's just put that out there. There are people standing at every Pride event, some of them in U-Hauls that got arrested, but they're standing at Pride events ready to tell us, you're choosing the wrong life. Mm-hmm. You're choosing this lifestyle. There would not be a need for a Trevor Project or the National Association of, LGBTQ suicide people and all the suicide hotlines and stuff if young people were still not hearing that message, which is unfortunate because we think we've evolved and moved so far. I wish I could say that, but when there's 323 laws that have been put on the books in the last 2 years, potentially to move through the political system against LGBTQ, we're not anywhere close to done.
Yeah. I mean, it's sobering because Mathew, I mean, you kind of started at the outset, right? Talking about kind of growing up in a different generation and maybe we're in a different place now. And hopefully there's been some progress made, right? But like, I think it's fair to like, we're not there yet.
Well, and the goal can't be to get everybody like it. And that's not what I think the intention is, right? No. But the thing is like, I speak for parents, right? And so I know that for parents, they have their dreams and their ideas, right? And your parents, they dreamed of what Rick was going to be and all the things Rick was going to accomplish. And, you coming to them and saying, hey, I like men, didn't fit into the box. And because it didn't fit into the box, then they were like, oh, and then they get into panic mode. Yep. Rather than what we talk about on this podcast all the time, which is sit with it. Maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world here. Maybe some really amazing things can come out of this if we just put some wind behind Rick's sails. And I think that's some of what I'd like you to talk about now, Rick, if you don't mind, which is if you don't mind stretching to be a little vulnerable, is like, how does that stuff hurt you? You can tell me you're bulletproof and I believe you. Maybe now you are strong and it doesn't blow you up. But early on, man, how would that stuff blow you up?
Well, I think a good way to show how it blew me up is my own contradiction. So I come out, go through kind of a horrendous, crazy divorce. Things finally start going good and getting along with the ex-wife and raising the girls. And oldest one starts high school. She hops in the car. Dad, got something to tell you. I go, okay. I'm dating a girl. I about drove off the road. Me, the gay dad who came out late in life, and I about drove off the road. I was freaking out. Had nothing to do with her. It had everything to do with what you just said, Mathew. It had to do with my expectation of my beautiful little girl, what I'd already created as this is who she's going to be. She wouldn't talk to me the rest of the day. The next day I go to pick her up because I work from home. So I do all the pickup, get, the kids home from school when we have them. And she got in the car and she said, I have one thing I want to say to you, Dad. I'm like, totally here. We had a rough day yesterday. Out of all the all the people, this is not easy to talk about. Out of all the people in my life, you were the one person I knew who would be totally cool with me sharing that with you. In that moment, everything I'd ever heard from anybody from 0 to 38 years old came to life because I was living through everything I'd been told right there in that moment. And the hurt and the depth of how much work I knew I still had to do within myself was fully alive again. And it hurt so deep because I actually was reliving everything every one of those people had said to me. And for weeks, I relived that because I'm like, you're such a hypocrite. And what did I hear? The one thing I heard from my own father's mouth, you're going to turn those girls gay. That's all I could hear. Simultaneously, all the other stuff that had been what I'd heard all along, it was all colliding in that moment. And that was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to endure. And it's also one of the things that made me the most proud as a parent, because that was the very first article I ever wrote about for Huffington Post about my gay life. Not to grandstand it, but like, here's when you meet yourself. Mm-hmm. This is where you come full tilt face to face with your own stuff and I used it from that perspective of, and it doesn't have to be about your child being gay. There's going to be a moment that you meet yourself with your child that you never saw coming. And it was still one of my proudest moments of being taken down to my knees by my kid and really starting to see, oh my gosh, I have a lot of work to do as a dad. I
want to bring you in, Frank, right here. This is a great place to hit the pause button because of what he just talked about, what I've talked about, what a lot of people have talked about in the past, where we mess up. We we do something that we wish we hadn't done, and we have to come back and we have to fix it the next day. And you also mentioned, Rick, in that phrase that sat with you for a few weeks. There's a lot of people that it sits with them a whole lot longer than that, Frank. They can't seem to let it go. They stay on it, and it ends up becoming so much the story that they can't ever unwind it. So can you speak in this moment, Frank, to how somebody can avoid the trap?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen, and everybody listening has probably seen people in their life go one of two extreme ways when anything goes wrong, right? One, they hold on to it and carry it forever, right? Never, we've used the term unpack, right? Never unpack it, never work through it, never try to rectify a situation that went wrong. And then all the way at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have people who never sit with it, never think about it, and just sweep it under their own mental rug and act like it never existed. Obviously, either of those two extremes, probably not ideal, right? Somewhere in the middle of, can I spend some time reflecting on what the heck just happened? And then the added harder part of, and now what is my responsibility to get out of the situation that I find myself in? And Rick, it sounds like that's kind of what you did, right? There was some reflection and there was a choice of, didn't do that great, right? If I had to do it over, I would have done it differently. But now I'm in this spot, and how do I move forward from this spot?
It was the first time I actually did something that now I use all the time, because it's been a contentious relationship with my parents for the greater part of this experience until just recently. But that was the first time I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say my dad's name, but what would dad do? And now what will I do differently?
Yeah.
And each time something would come up with the kids, and I've been through a lot of stuff with my kids, like most parents have been, and taken some really low lows with them and high highs. And the thing, other than getting pissed off like I used to, I still can every once in a while, but that's what my dad would do. Pissed off, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is how you're going to show up. Anytime I feel that energy showing up, I'm like, stop, pause. What would dad do, and what am I going to do differently?
I want to say, Mathew, how many times have we talked about, like, breaking that pattern, breaking that generational cycle of, well, this is what my dad did, and this is what my dad's dad did, and is it going to stop with me?
Remember what Sam said when we were interviewing him the other day? This problem used to run in my family until it ran into me.
Yeah.
It has stopped with me. And I think if there's anything to really applaud Rick on in this moment, it's that bit of discovery, as you just said, but then the ability to go back, make amends the next day, to fix it, to not spend 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks thinking about what you could have done differently, and literally just to keep moving, keep pressing. And I'm curious now how that transitional moment in your relationship with your daughter has played out long term.
It's one of the greatest lessons I learned, because now I can be with my kids in a completely different way. And I'm still not perfect. I'm not ever going to say I'm dad of the year. Not going to happen. But even as some things have come up in as they're adults, I mean, they're 27 and 23 now. And, there's lots of life transitions starting to happen. I could be like, no, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. And I'm like, man, if mom and dad had let me go, well, go figure out. Let me know what you need. There's so much more inspiration. Hey, what do you need? Let me know. But I also want you to try to go figure that out and tell me where you need me.
Yeah.
Suddenly my stress and energy level goes way down, even though I'm a parent. Of course I'm going to worry about them, right? But I'm not responsible for them per se. I will be there in a heartbeat. But when I have to be responsible because they're not doing what I say, and this is it, oh my God, my stress level and anxiety, no wonder I had a freaking stroke 5 years ago, right? Because that's one thing I didn't let go of. And once I did, I'm like, okay, well, I did what dad did. I had a stroke. Not going to happen again if I can help it, because I don't have to be in control of everything. And I think if you ask my daughters, they're like, yeah, dad's a completely different guy than he would have been 10 years ago. He kind of takes stuff. He'll say what he wants to say, but he doesn't say, this is the way you do it. He'll give us the guidance and say, hey, go fuck up. Please go fuck up. So
please go fuck up. I love that, man. I do so much. Now, a lot of what you talk about now, Rick, is living this unapologetic life and no excuses. And it's clear to me where that framework starts, right? You probably felt yourself like you had to make all the excuses in the world. Yep. And you probably felt like you had to say sorry every damn day of your life for feeling the way that you felt. And so somebody could hear that phrase, live an unapologetic life, and they could think that means do whatever the fuck you want to whoever you want with no regard. But that's not what you're talking about.
No, there is a caveat to that. And I think it's because of the people I've had the privilege to work with, and watching myself screw this up majorly as I came out of the closet. There were moments where I'm like, screw you, it's my life now, and I'm going. There were moments that I let a guy influence me about his experience with his ex-wife, and I started acting that way with my ex-wife, and I almost lost my kids over it. All of this was about wait. And now when I talk about, if I'm just working in the realm of working with men coming out of the closet, I want you to unequivocally live an unapologetic life by dumping your excuses and facing your fears, and come out of the closet without apologies, but with a whole lot of dignity and respect for yourself and others. And if you don't want to do it with dignity and respect, guess what? Go do your journey, but I'm not your guy. Because there has to be some dignity and respect on both sides. And people are going to show you if they can't do that. That's fine. I'm going to help you figure that out too. But if you're the guy who's coming out of the closet like, I gave her kids, I gave her house, I gave her this, or a woman that's like, I gave him this, I gave him that, it's about me. Great. There's plenty of other beautiful people out there in the world that can help you do this. It isn't going to be me.
Did you and your wife ever consider some scenario where there would be an open marriage?
Briefly. But I knew in my heart by that point, because of how it all unfolded. I met a guy in London, and he happened to live in San Francisco. I lived in LA. I'm like, oh, isn't this convenient?
Isn't this convenient? Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but it was so intense. I mean, and I can share this because I share it on stages all the time, but it was such an interesting night when I met him, because I'm going to just say I was a hoe. I was a big hoe the entire time I was hiding in the closet, but I was very good at being a big hoe. I never passed on a disease. I never got caught. I mean, there were close calls. And I'm not saying this because I'm proud. This is not because, oh, look, here's how you do it.
You're just telling your story, man.
I'm just telling my story, okay? And then I meet this guy in London. I'm on a business trip. All the rest of my colleagues had gone off to something else. I went to an award ceremony to accept an award for our company. And I come back and I'm tired. I'm going to bed. And then I'm like, well, wait, I've never done the London gay scene. I really hadn't done any gay scene, but who's going to catch me, right? Now, Coworkers, yes, because I was surrounded by quite a few gay and lesbian coworkers. But I'm like, it's a big city. I'll find a gay bar somewhere and just go, let's go experience, right? And then, of course, Mr. Wonderful walks in. We have a great evening. He was handsome. And I'm like, why are you looking at me? I mean, this doesn't compute, right? Mm. We go to the hotel after running into Cher, but that's a whole nother story.
What? That's gotta be.
That's a whole. Yeah, that was a whole thing. Like, and that should have been my sign, quite honestly, because we walk into this bar. She doesn't.
Yeah, right.
This is when her Believe album was just coming out, literally just coming out. She comes out, does a like cameo, like sing a song sort of thing. And if you believe in love, I'm like, okay, well, there, it lit the fire, right? Mm-hmm. We go to his hotel room. I can do that. Been there, done that. And that was the night there was no sex. I fell in love and I fell apart because I didn't know what to do with this. Mm. But that was also the night that I'm like, okay, here we go. And because of how that whole thing unraveled, that's why I knew I can't have an open marriage. This was well beyond just, I love her. I care for her. I obviously love my kids beyond any shadow of a doubt, but I love her enough to go, I can't have my foot in two different places. My heart can't do that. And
I think we have a kind of an opportunity here, Rick, that maybe have you pass on some advice, like for guys who might be listening to this podcast and maybe this is their life, right? They're 36 years old and they're right on the verge and they're in a relationship that they know isn't them. And they, it sounds like there's a decent way to do this and there's a way to blow this thing up and turn it into a mess. So what do you recommend? What's a decent way to do this? How can a guy get this conversation started?
Starts with yourself.
Okay.
Be honest with yourself. Or are you just curious? Mm-hmm. There can be people who are just curious. I actually am talking to a guy next week. He's like, I just really am curious about trying like gay sex with a guy, but I just can't see myself doing it because it's a sin. Okay, well, let's get clear. Are you doing this because of this or because of this? If you're just getting your rocks off, let's call it what it is, guys. Guys, hey, you can get your rocks off pretty easily. It doesn't take a whole lot for most men to like, okay, let's do this, right? But if you know, hands down, that getting your rocks off is because you look at a man and go, that's what I'm attracted to. And here's the one question I always ask, and that even before I even start with a coaching client, can you see yourself a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, rolling over in bed, looking at him and going, God, I hope he brushed his teeth and I'm going to go make breakfast. If you can see yourself doing that, you're probably gay, because that's the life. That is, we get up, we put our pants on. Well, I put my shorts on these days because everything I do is on Zoom. So we go make breakfast. We have fights. We argue over where are we going on vacation or what we're going to buy for out. Can you see yourself doing that? Because if you can see that, you're probably gay, or you might be bisexual too, but that's what it is. If it's, I just want to get my rocks off with a guy and I want to feel what it feels like, you may be just exploring. I'm never going to tell somebody you're gay because of that, but I'll leave that to the psychologist.
I actually have a question that's going to back us up a couple of years, and it's on my mind, and I feel like it's on other, and it may be a really naive question.
It's okay. We're allowed to get messy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You came out, as you said, at 19.
Yep.
My hunch is, chronologically, you got married to a woman after that.
Yep.
How did we get from coming out at 19 to marrying a woman?
We're going into therapy. Here we go. I come out.
Have a seat, Rick.
I'm starting the clock.
Yeah. I come out.
This one's on me.
I go have the moment with the hunky pastor. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and dad come to visit not long after that. And the first thing my God bless him, womanizing father says to me is, we're sitting in the cafeteria at the college. And this gal walks by and he goes, now that's what you need. You need a woman that looks like that. Guess what Rick Wetton did? He started dating that gal. And the next time mom and dad came, they're like, she's beautiful. And she was gorgeous. She was absolutely stunning. And we dated. And I started like, I don't know. And then suddenly I found out that she was going out with this guy. And I was jealous because he was hot as hell. I'm like, holy crap, no wonder you're going out with him. I mean, he was built and everything. I'm like, well, bye-bye me. That's fine.
Right.
So then what's the first thing Papa Bear said? Oh, no, I'm Papa Bear. But Papa says to me, well, what'd you do to mess that one up? You need to go get yourself another woman. So do you see what's starting to happen here?
Mm-hmm.
This is what you do. So then I started dating this other girl. They weren't so crazy about her because she was a good girl. Her father was a minister. And then I had an emotional moment where I'm like, I'm going to become a pastor too. I had one of those breakdown moments. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Now, actually, I'd be a pretty damn good pastor, I think.
I believe that you would be a great pastor.
Because I call people out on stuff all the time. But there's where the pattern starts, right? So, guess what Rick's getting? He's getting the stroke from dad. He's getting that nice stroke from dad. Then graduate. Things were kind of crazy in the college years because I wasn't like dating anybody after I left that college and went to Oklahoma State. And then I'm going to just kind of pretend to not be this. And then I get my first job at a college and I meet my wife, who happened to be a student. Literally, and this is not a joke, guys. She comes in to interview to work in the food court at the college. She walks out of my office. My boss pops his head in the door and goes, "So what do you think?" I said, "Well, I think she's qualified and I think I might marry that one." 1 year later, we are married. Why? Whoa. Because it worked. I liked her. We didn't have a problem having sex or anything. And guess what? As soon as I talked to my parents about it, like, "Oh, that's so great."
You got all kinds of affirmations.
Affirmations. Right. If you continue to get the affirmation of good boy, good boy, good boy. Oh, bad boy, bad boy, bad boy. Most of us as humans, we want the good boy, good boy, good boy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good boy can be bad boy too.
I mean, one of the kind of the analogies that I use a lot, the whole, like, if you put a frog in boiling water, then it jumps out. But if you put it in a pot and slowly boil it, then it stays and dies. Right. And I felt like as we were having this conversation, I'm looking back at what I think is this boiling pot of, wait a minute, you came out. Wait a minute, you married a woman after that. Right. Like, connect the dots for me. But our lives are not lived in a boiling pot. It's that slow simmer of good boy, good boy, good boy, and one tiny step at a time. And there you are.
And this is where I always get in trouble. This is where I always get the hate mail. Well, you knew. Why did you do this? I knew I loved her too.
Yeah.
I loved the concept of marriage, and I loved the concept of being with her. I loved the concept of, again, I did not have a problem having sex. So in the gay community, I'm like, oh, well, you're not really gay because you had sex with a woman. I'm like, yeah, screw you on that one too, boys. Because you know what? There's a whole lot more of us in the gay community who have done that. So that doesn't make us, horrible people either. But that's the pressure. That's where you kind of started this whole thing, Mathew, is when it's the conformity thing, none of us we don't want to be the outsiders. Except when we grow up and figure out it's okay. Outsiders are really cool. But until that happens and you reach that turning point where I'd much rather be an outlier than an insider who's miserable.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, I had a conversation with somebody this morning. We were talking about last night. I went out for a walk late. It was like 10 o'clock at night and there was a woman running. And I looked at her and I thought, she was looking over at me and I thought, man, she's over there and all that's going through her head is, who is this guy? Is he going to hurt me? Is he going to bother me? And all this stuff. And the only thought in my head was, how do we get to a world where one day that woman, the only thought she thinks is, that guy will help me if somebody if I get in trouble, that's a guy that's going to help me. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way about the gay community. I think it's time, right? It's just time for us to get past this thing where we treat it like it's such a different lifestyle and way of living and way of loving and way of being. I don't know that there's many differences outside of the connection physically at the end of the, the end of the experience. What would it take for us? Because I think this is a great question to maybe wrap up with. How can we be better? How can we be a better supportive community for people that just want to come out, live their best life, and they're sick and tired of holding this thing in? I mean, what do we have to do? What do we have to get right?
That's a great question.
Because I mean what I said about the runner, right? Like eventually I want gay people to feel like more people are on my side than against me. More people are cheering for me to come forward with my
I want to be able to walk down a street. And so it's so interesting you told that story, Mathew, because I was out walking this morning and Of course, I'm huffing and puffing because I've got COVID and like, just throw the lung. Let's just throw the lung and be done with this, right? And this woman is coming towards me. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", I'm 300 pounds, right? So I'm an imposing figure. And I see her kind of give me that look. And all I said to her was, right on, get that exercise. That's why I'm out here too. And suddenly her whole demeanor changed. It was like I was no longer a threat, right? So what do we have to do in your own world? And the reason I shared that story is to be able to look at a person and say, what do I need to do for you so that I'm no longer a threat to you? I can't walk down the street with a black brother or sister and be in their shoes, but there's a whole lot I can relate to. But I can walk down the street and nobody knows I'm gay until I go, girl, let's have a conversation here, right? But when we can walk down a street and we can look at each other like, what can I do to make your life better? How can I see you? How can I hear you? And the thing that I've learned the most that seems to be a common ground for everybody is a quote that I always close every talk I do. Because this is what binds us together, is when we realize the truth of who we are is far more powerful than the false truth any of us are pretending to be. So go show each other who we truly are. That's when you can make the difference. And it's going to get messy because some of us are going to show each other who we really are. And it's like, that's not acceptable. But man, when we show each other who we are and we're like, I just need to feel you. I need to see you. I need to understand you. Help me do that. There's no more pretending. We're being as raw and authentic as we can possibly be. And that's all I want anybody to do, is like truly be who you are and show that to the person outside of you, because pretending sucks. When I can see you and you can see me and there's no pretending. In fact, Martha Beck, Oprah's coach from years ago, who she catapulted to stardom because of Oprah, when she talked about pretending, and if you're pretending, Mathew, and I'm pretending, guess what? We have a pretend relationship.
That's right.
And to me, that's what it takes to get all of this working together.
Frank, final thoughts from you?
Like, we've talked about bullying before, right? And this idea that 99%, if not all 100% of the time, when, you know, like a kid is bullying someone, like it's almost always about what's going on in that kid's world, the bully's world, and the bully's head. You know, it really has nothing, because you can pick on something about everyone, right? If you look hard enough, you can find something to pick on about everyone, right? And it's not about the kid being picked on. It's about the person doing the bullying and what's going on in their world, some lack of acceptance about something about themselves or what's going on in their life. And it's like, in order to get to this world that we're kind of talking about and hoping that we, again, move kind of closer toward this one where we're more accepting, right? We're more on each other's side than not. Like, we have to get a whole bunch of people who are okay with themselves first. That's why people like me have jobs, right? Because there are people out there who want to work on themselves. Unfortunately, there's always going to be that sliver of the population who doesn't think that there's anything wrong with them, and is always going to project that out, and it's going to come out like hate, and it's going to come out like bullying and all that. I think the goal is just to make that sliver as small, smaller and smaller as possible.
You got a smart partner there, Matt. I don't know how you landed him, but I'm just saying, this guy that you partnered up with, I mean,
it's because he tells me good boy, good boy, good boy, and I keep coming back.
Exactly. You keep coming back. So y'all need to go to therapy, it sounds like. So there we go.
He says all the nice things to me when that record button is on.
I think I still say nice things when it's off.
Yeah, you do.
Thank God that's over. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, Rick, I love you for sharing all that today. Thank you so much. And it allows us a great lens into your life. And I think really, if you're any kind of human, you develop a deeper sense of compassion for what people have to live through. And it's not just about being gay. People are living lies and untruths every single day of their lives. It isn't always about their sexuality. People are lying to themselves about who they are in their career, who they are in their personal life, who they are with partners. Like you said, they're pretending all day long. I call it costume parties. Every day we wake up and we put on these costumes and we go to parties. And the problem with that is that you project all of that pretendness on everybody else. And so nobody ever gets you. I think Frank was right earlier. We start to mend a lot of things in this world. And so thank you, man, for coming on and sharing.
Well, thanks for having me. This is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. So
yeah.
Honestly, but if you ever ask me back, I just want Frank. I don't want you.
That's fine. That's totally fine.
Just Frank and I,
You guys, and I hear that every week, by the way. Come on.
Again, I don't think Frank was quite. I mean, he's held his own for this one. He's
done good.
I think I could dress him up and take him out. Okay, we can make this work.
I have no fashion sense at all, so you're gonna have to dress me up.
Well, that's why it's called Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. So there we go.
I know.
See, everything just changed my voice. Okay, we're gonna play that. Let's go, boys. Come on.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1. To help you feel less alone. 2. Encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3. When you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcast. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.